Hi! So after the last video I've made about Qubicle Constructor, which was a short introduction and showing the basics of the tool, I thought it might be worthwhile to show some lessons learned. As I was working in the last weeks with Qubicle, for example, to create this Mercedes from the 30s. For sure you have recognized the model already, or not. I came across one or the other interesting feature, which is maybe not as self-explanatory as the others. So yeah, let me share in this video some more advanced tips maybe. So let's just get started with something which in every tool is a good idea, and that's actually using shortcuts. I have prepared a short picture, small picture actually, which you see here in my Explorer, and I can just drag it into Qubicle. So that's one of the things I came across, how to import pictures into Qubicle. As unfortunately Qubicle is not offering any text tool, so you cannot write in Qubicle. But with this workaround via a picture which you can just import into Qubicle, it's actually easy to have some text if you really want it to. So let's do two things here with this. First, let's go briefly through the major shortcuts I'm using. There are much more than that, but that's the more common for me at the moment. And then afterwards we will take some of the text here and try to alter it a little bit so it looks nicer, like you would maybe rework it then to use it in your models. So Control Z I think I showed several times already in my last videos. So let's move the car. I think now this is a mistake. So just by pressing Control Z, I can redo or undo my last step, and redo actually is holding in addition the Shift key. So we have here some nice ways to move forward and backward without going via the menu. The next one is Control A, so you can select everything, Control D, deselect everything. And what is quite interesting is this invert selection. So let's say I have the picture here selected and now I want to invert it. So Control Shift and I will do the trick. So that's quite nice feature if you are working on a model which consists of several matrices like this one. I have the driver in the middle now selected, and now I want to have everything apart from him selected. So that's a quite nice way to do it. The next one is Duplicate B. So far, maybe you are using, as I've did in the past, the Control Copy, Control Paste way of duplicating. The problem you have with this one is that everything which you paste in will be moved to the center of your work area. So you can prevent that by pressing Control B, which is the duplicate, and it will be duplicated at the point of the matrix which you have selected. So here it's not so tragic, but if you have something which is moved in all the 3 dimensions, it might be a bit cumbersome to move them back from the origin to the point where you want to have it. So that's a quite good shortcut. And another one which I start to like is Control H and Control Shift H, which is hide unhide. So typically if I want to take a look on a model, I double click it, I change into the matrix mode, and I have it for myself without all the others. But maybe you want to see it in relation to some other models. That can work with this model button here, but you see for the figures here it's not really suitable. So let's turn this off. Let's go back. Moved here. And if I now want to see how the car looks like with the driver but without this body here, let's just hide him with Control H. And now I can take a look. I still have these dotted lines to indicate where there is a hidden object, but it's quite nice and much better now. So let's select him again and unhide him. So that's the most of them, or some of the shortcuts I'm using at the moment, and for sure some interesting ones. Now that was part 1. Part 2, I suggested to work on some of the words here, and let's maybe choose for the shortcuts. So I will just select the shortcuts. We learned something nice. Let's invert it. Remove all the rest. Now let's zoom in a little bit and delete the white voxels around. If I click here, you see that the voxels inside the O are not selected, so I can select them in addition by holding down Shift. Holding down Control and left clicking would deselect it again. So again, another nice shortcut. Let's remove it. Let's go into the model view and resize it. So this one now I want to move to the origin because I was up there somewhere, and moving it back again might be painful, and I want to be close to my car, which is centered here on the origin. So let's use shortcuts now. It doesn't look perfect yet, so we could post produce it, or how do you call this? So just change some voxels in color, remove some others. Let's remove here the top line. Maybe the very bright voxels don't fit into what I want to do. So you have some possibilities to work here in Qubicle to improve the letters. It's not a full-fledged tool to do so, but it can work out if you really want to do this. Now let's maybe change the color a little bit into something more visible. So we have here now red shortcuts. Okay, so now you see the text looks not that bad already. Let's deselect. Here we go. And as said, you can improve the letters much more by investing a little bit more time into this. Now what is interesting with Qubicle, you can create very easily some 3D effects. Very basic 3D effects, but nevertheless. Let's go here on the stretch tool, bottom left, top left, sorry, and just add some more depth in here. So let's move this to 5, and you see instantly I got here some additional voxels just attached, and I get this more 3D effect for the text. So you can move it later on, have a slightly ISO view on it, and you see a little bit this 3D effect. We can improve this also and bake in some shadow. Let's take a gray color here. There we go. So it's quite easy to really have some basic lettering in there, and yeah, it's not too bad, I would say. So that's about 3D text effects, if you want to call so, about loading images in here. Apart from images, we can also load textures and put them on top of objects. So let's assume I want to put a new cover on our car here. So I want to put a texture on top of the roof, and yeah, let's see where. So what we need first is texture. I've looked here up some textures in Google. Let's just choose one, and I just go for this one here. If I copy it, Qubicle will ask if I want to copy it into the local clipboard. I say yes. And then we have, once you've selected a model, here are texture tools. One is to extract the texture, one to edit. We want to edit. So I just click on it, and you see it's already applied. You can change here some settings, so you can not use the clipboard but load a file for the texture, and you can change the direction, so you can add texture on the left, on the right, on the bottom, and what we chose was from the top. Now confirm, and there you go. So from the top you see that's the texture we have selected, which was that one, and it actually is already, let's say, voxelized. So that's a quite nice thing. Let's undo it, however. There we go. So let's go a little bit more into the design itself. So this was a rather complex model. It took me some time to work it out. Had some challenges, and one of the challenge was that it was a comparable large model. I started with a block somehow, and if you work with large models in Qubicle, you can run into some restrictions. So let's create a sphere and let's make it big. So let's go for a 300 by 300 by 300. You see already by creating it, it takes time, right? So there we go now. It's an awful lot of voxels. And if I want to move it now, zoom in, it's really a pain in the ass. It's not really very performant. And actually Qubicle Constructor is a little bit struggling with larger text voxel models. I have already improved it because I have deactivated here the wire. If I activate the wire, it becomes even less responsive. So that's really not something you really want to do. Now you see now with wires, and I better don't even start moving. So let's just deactivate the wires, and this will now take a little bit time, so that's something you should not try at home. And there is a way to improve your performance, even though you are handling large models. And I've just deleted it now. I've just deleted, I see also my car, which was not the intention. So let's see if I can undo that. There we go. So if you, let's create now a not so big sphere. I think you got the point. So still let's remove the wires. So if you don't need the voxels which are inside the sphere or any other large object, there is a tool which is here, this hollow tool. So I just clicked on it, and if you are using a large model, you will see that the performance is instantly increasing. Because what this hollow is doing is actually all the voxels which are inside a matrix or inside a model, they will be removed and deleted. So this now is not a solid sphere, like if I create it from scratch. Let's just do this. Let's put it here, and I just cut it in half. There we go. Even the selection tool is working pretty slow if you have a large amount of voxels, so that's really something which can make you struggle. Actually, if you want to reuse the models or use them later on in something like Blender or Maya or whatever, you can resize and play with the sizes there. But sometimes it's better and easier for me, at least, to use already large models here inside the Qubicle tool already, and then it's just painful a bit. So you see, it's a filled sphere if you create it. Now that's the sphere where we have applied the hollow tool or used the hollow tool. Let's cut off here a piece also, and you will see already it's hollow. And therefore Qubicle doesn't have to process so many information for all the voxels, and it improves the performance. You can much easier move things around. So let's remove this one. So that's the hollow tool. Actually, I've cut this now by doing using the selection tool and just pressing delete. There is another tool which is quite fun, and it's this one here, which is divide. You can select, let's say on the x-axis, I want to make 2 matrices out of that, and you see it will be just split here. And now I have 2, I can just move them. And you can just go on like that. So 2 by 2 by 2, and your models will be split. So that's quite a nice feature if you need to divide items into, or your models into more than one model from different sizes. So quite nice things you can do here also. Now let's delete all of them. Let's create a new one, because there is one more thing which you can do with the spheres. What you will recognize is also that there is actually a lack of tools like drawing circles. So that for me turned into an issue, because I wanted to create here these tires and I didn't want to spend too much time doing this. So what I have done is I've used the sphere tool. You see it's around 20 by 20, like the tire. And what I did was that I simply click on hollow. So inside it will be empty. I zoom in, let's center it, and then let's say that the tire has to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, let's say should be 5 voxels broad, and there we go. You have your tire. It's not finished yet. The circles are, well, not symmetric, but you got the idea. So you can just add now another layer here inside, and it's much easier. You have some kind of a form which you can use as a starting point, and it's already a wheel, so a nice thing. And also, if you want to create round curved like windows or whatever, you can use these spheres as some kind of a template. Let's take again 100, 100, and let's make it again hollow because it's faster to be processed. I go into the matrix mode, center, and I just want to create now kind of a template. So here we go, and you have now a perfect circle. So now if I would want to, let's hide these fellows here. If I would like to create a window which is a little bit more round, I could just move now my template to the window or to the point, and then I could use it to model actually, and I just turn on the model here, and I could use it to create now another kind of window just by starting off, let's say here, and then adding voxels as I go along here. So I could really try to follow the template. Typically what I do is that I do it like this. I create 2, then I just copy paste them, and I can just move them along my matrix here, or my template, and then you have at least the shape once you're done, and you can start working on making it pretty, moving it on the right position, and so on. So again, something which I think might be a good tip if you are struggling as I was with round shapes, for example. So let's unhide our guys here. And now in this scene we have like 4 matrices, right? Now what you see if you click every single of them is down here they have names. So this guy, that car is called Sphere 9, this one Cubicle 4. Actually the names derive from what I've used as a starting point. So don't ask me why I used a sphere for the car. Cuboid also here, and here it's taking the name shortcuts not from the text but from the name of the picture file I've imported, which was called shortcuts.png, I think it was. So if you want to use these models later on in any animation tool, and you have more than that, for example, you have the limbs separated of this guy, the fingers and so on, you might end up with a lot of matrices here. So what you can do is to name them, and this you can either do by pressing modify and then name, or you see here the shortcut. So let's press F2, and I want to name this guy to Jack. This guy I want to name Jim. That's my Mercedes, and shortcuts is fine. So now if I click them, you see the names given there. If you make them unique, you import the models in your animation tool and you will see already the names. So it's much easier for you to identify the small finger on the left hand if you give it a proper name. So that's also something which doesn't look big but can help later on to work a little bit smoother with your exported models. So another thing which I frequently do is taking pictures of my models. So let's say I would like to take the picture here from an angle like, I don't know, like that. However, now I recognize, okay, I'm not so happy from this angle, the mirror looks weird. So I go back to the mirror, I start editing it. Now I have it. And then you move out again, you check it, and you messed up your perspective. So what you could do is, you have here different cameras, and you have an option to lock them. So what I try to do is, if I have found a perspective I like and I want to use for my screenshots, I just freeze the camera here, so lock camera. You see I cannot move. If I want to move, you have the camera icon with an X, with a red X. And I use this as my camera for making pictures and the other one for working. So here I change. Then I jump to camera 3 and I see how the picture will look like. I use this also to create special views which I use more often in different modeling activities, let's say. For example, here with the car, I wanted to have quite often a view straight from the right. So again, I center here the car in my view, I pressed here on the right, I lock the camera, and I can again go on, start working, and if I want to see how the model looks from exactly this point of view, I just go in there and I have the view. Again, how the picture looks like. So the camera options are quite a nice feature to help me moving from one view to the other and lock some of the views as I want to have them. So that's something also very interesting you can do here. Okay, so as we have been already on rendering, the render settings, I think they are not rocket science. what is interesting, you can create a background color which will be used if you render a turntable or a bitmap file. If you save your render as a PNG file, the background will stay transparent no matter what you have here. So that's something interesting. Sometimes you should not change too much this frame per rotation and animation delays here, because they have to be in a relation. I think it's 10:1, otherwise your animation on the turntable will just break. So it will turn like half the way and then it will start back to the starting point, so the turntable will not finish. So that's something to avoid, or play around with the ratios to have the right ones set. And the last thing probably I would like to show for now is the export feature. So while we export, and actually you get another Explorer window open, and I just click here to save. It doesn't matter how it's called. You get the settings, and here are several interesting ones, like you can select if one object will be created per matrix, which means in this case we have one matrix shortcuts, one matrix this guy, the driver, the second, the third matrix, and the car, the fourth matrix. So if I do it like that, I will end up with 4 objects, which I can use in my further tools, animation tools. You could export it as a single object, so all of them will be joined into one. And you could create out of each cube one object. So that's the options you have there. You can also scale up the model, how it will be exported as an object. That's quite useless, I think, in the meanwhile, because you can easily rescale them later on, so I don't use it anymore. And you have here in this setting for simple text some settings you can play around if you encounter some issues in, for example, Blender, that there are some borders shown around your voxels. Then you can start playing here around with faces per color, with including padding, draw outlines to textures. That might be the setting responsible for these borders, and so on and so on. So a nice feature, however, that's only available if you go into buying the Home or the Master Edition. And maybe one more thing with the Home and the Master Edition. Here is another tool, Create Landscape, which is not available in the basic version. And you can just use it as a terrain generator. So you can select the color, like I want a grassland, the size of your terrain, and then give it a try, and you see that Qubicle is here creating my terrain, which again, in any animation tool, I can resize it, enlarge it, and then you have here valleys, some hills, and with this terrain generator you have also the option to create other terrains like desert, like tropical mountains, and so on. So you see the result will be different, the heights are different, and so on. Yeah, so that would be it for the moment. I hope there were one or the other things mentioned in this video which maybe you were not aware yet, and which hopefully will help you in working a little bit smoother with Qubicle. So thanks a lot for watching, and maybe we see us in the next video. Take care. Bye.